very opinionated hockey Twitter user Isaac here for today's episode. We have him on the phone talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. How you doing, Isaac?
I'm surviving, I'm living, I'm doing my best. So I can't be said about every team, but I, as a person, am doing my best.
And Isaac is here today to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Isaac is very opinionated, like I said, and very knowledgeable about the Maple Leafs, so I had to get him on the phone for today's episode. We're going to be talking about why the Leafs have maybe struggled a little bit so far this season, what's changed recently, how we think they're going to do for the rest of the season, and if they do make the playoffs, how we think they are going to do if they get there. Firstly, Isaac, right now, I know your opinion is that the Leafs are a playoff team, but not so long ago, that was not the opinion. So what has changed since then?
That's the beauty about hockey, right? About how the point system, which I believe is broken, but that's a different discussion for a different day. That's the beauty of it, where 1 week, the Leafs are either... Like, if we just look at this past week, you go, okay, last Saturday, what happened with the Leafs? Well, they lost to a Zamboni driver. Yeah, the most embarrassing loss in this franchise's history, which is saying something. And at that point, I believe they were either out of the playoff spot or just in one, by like 1 or 2 points, in Florida had 2 games in hand.
Just in one.
Sure. And Florida had like 2 games in hand where 1 or 2 points out. So at that point, your odds still aren't looking good because you just always under the assumption that those teams are going to win their games in hand. Well, flash forward a week, and now Toronto went to Tampa, beat Tampa in regulation, went to Florida, beat them in regulation, then came back to Toronto, beat Vancouver in regulation. Those 6 points, especially those 2 over Florida, huge. Now shot their chances right up, where a week ago it was you just lost to a Zamboni driver, you're done, you're cooked, game over.
Well, you can look at it. Well, let's start with. I'm gonna just address the Maple Leafs. If they lose to the Panthers, it's 1 point difference instead of a 5 point difference against them. And let's spin it and look at Carolina. 1 week ago, they just beat a team with a Zamboni driver in net. Now look at them. They are, not really in a playoff race. They're a bit adrift. They're in the race. Sorry, they're in the race, but they're a bit adrift, and they've had some bad losses over the last few games. So, that's how quickly hockey can change, especially with the way the league is structured at the moment. So what is it like that's got them the success recently?
I would say more than anything else, it's just been that everybody is doing their part now. Guys are finally stepping up when they need to, with the exception of Frederick Anderson, which is a different discussion this season. But pretty much everybody else on the team over this last stretch here has stepped up their game. Matthews he had never faltered this season. He may have a bad game here and there, but he's been their most consistent player. Same with Nylander. But guys like Marner, who, despite putting up points pretty much every single game, wasn't looking good. He's looking much better. Tavares is finally goal scoring again because he was putting up points. And then their depth are guys like Kapanen stepping up. Guys like Hall, finally, even though he's not putting up points, he was struggling for the longest time. Yeah. You look at a guy like Jason Spezza, who, while was never really bad, and he's a fourth liner, he has continued to play just as well as he should have been. And that's been great. Kasper Kapanen, after sitting out that game because he missed that practice or that meeting with the team, he's reached the Kapanen that we saw from last season where he's scoring, he's doing his job. So I think that Zamboni driver game, now this take could age terribly over the next stretch here. But I think that game really lit something under them to be like, hey, we are much better than this. But when we play like that.
I was going to ask you if you think that game was a turning point to a degree for their season. And if it would end up being like, the TSN turning point of the Maple Leaf season. And, well, you kind of answered it already.
Yeah, I would really hope it is. I would honestly really hope it is.
You'd think you'd respond well to losing to a 42-year-old Zamboni driver that works for your company.
But I would say as well, in terms of how the Leafs have gone from you will be extremely lucky to make the playoffs to, okay, you have a really good shot, which is how poorly everybody else that's in the race has played. Just looking at their last 10 here, the Leafs are 6-4-0. That's pretty good. That's fine. Whatever.
That's fine.
But then you look at the teams in the wildcard spot and out of it. The Islanders, who are in that first wildcard spot, they're 3-5-2 in their last 10. Columbus is 2-4-4. Yep. Carolina is 4-4-2. The Rangers, who have been red hot thanks to Artemi Panarin, who's going to have one of the most underrated seasons in NHL history. He has been amazing. The Rangers are 7-3-0, which is great. The Panthers are 3-6-1, and then Montreal's 3-5-2. So Leafs have been getting a ton of help in terms of the teams they're in the race with losing their games. And that's been extremely notable.
And by the way, those first 3 teams you listed, all in the Metro, the other 2 under them in the Atlantic. So that just shows you how broken the system is in the NHL. But like you said, that is not the argument we're having. And yeah, you're right. The Leafs have been all right. It's just, a case that the other teams around them have not been all right. And, I did an episode a few weeks ago talking about how poor the Leafs record was against Atlantic opponents. You were the one who actually gave me these statistics for that episode. And now all of a sudden they are actually beating teams in the Atlantic. Like you said, they beat the Lightning, they beat the Panthers, and they beat the Canadians? Or
no, they still haven't. Those are the only 2. It's funny, since that episode, those are the only 2 teams they played.
Oh, it's just
in the division. Yeah, because they lost to Buffalo. They might be in Ottawa. I forget which one of those games came first. But they definitely lost to Buffalo, and then they've only played Tampa and Florida since then. I believe they still have one more game against Detroit, Montreal, one more game against Boston, 2 against Tampa, and 1 against Florida.
They did beat Ottawa since that episode. It was very very early after, but they did lose to the Sabres. You're correct.
Yeah,
they got pumped 5-2 by the Sabres.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna address one of my earlier takes this season, where I said Frederick Anderson was the key success factor for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that he was a top 10 goalie in the NHL, arguably top 5. You said I was wrong, and holy fuck, you were right. He has been.
The thing is,
he's been fucking horrendous.
The thing is, I'm more than happy to say that I was right about something. You know that, but even I would have suggested, I was saying you were wrong based on what it should be expected, his just normal numbers. His 9-16, 9-18, and I was going, but it's not that great. I didn't expect him to fall off this hard, this fast, which is funny, because if you just look at his record, great numbers, 28, 13, and 6. That's pretty great, know? But you understand that this dude starts every single game with a .500 save percentage. 2 of the first 4 shots every single game goes in. He struggles to let in under 3 every single night, and that's why they've been losing more games than they probably should have.
Yes. That's a huge part of it. I guess to a degree I was correct when I said he was a key success factor, because him not performing is resulting in issues for the team. But obviously that's going to be the case for any team when the goalie's not making saves.
Exactly.
You can score 3, but if you allow 4, you're going to lose. Right, and if your goalie allows 3 in the first period on 6 shots, then you are going to struggle to win the game.
And it takes a hit on morale. It's hard to keep yourself motivated when you battle back, and then your goalie lets in another one. Then you tie it up. Then he lets in another one.
Yeah,
and it's so hard to just maintain that intensity and continue to score goals when your goalie isn't helping you.
And it's very deflating as well. You work so hard to get that goal back, and then the other team gets an easy one, and you think, it's deflating. You just work so hard, and they just get the easy one like that. It's tough to respond from something like that,
And that's why I feel like the win against Florida, this most recent one, was pretty great, because they went down 3-1 early.
Yeah.
They went down 3-1 early.
Freddie was not playing
well. But thankfully, Sergei Bobrovsky is horrible.
Yes.
Just thankfully, and they were able to tie it up and then win that game.
So, looking at the rest of the season for the Toronto Maple Leafs, what do you think that has in store for them? How do you think they're going to perform?
Well, I think we have a big road trip coming up this week. We have San Jose and a back-to-back with LA and Anaheim, which I think would be a great chance to get Jack Campbell and Frederick Anderson in against their former teams. But knowing my luck, it's probably going to be the reverse, and we're going to see Anderson against LA and Campbell against Anaheim. Because it would be nice to see them
against. Yeah, it would be nice to see them against their old teams.
But looking at that would be a great opportunity to pick up 6 points, considering the fact that these teams aren't very good this season. I believe they've beaten all of them so far this season. Don't quote me on that. I know they've beaten San Jose for sure, and I want to say they've beaten Anaheim, but I don't know about LA. But that's all right. I'm good. I would even say taking 4 out of 6 points on this road trip would be a positive.
Yeah, I'd be happy with 4 out of 6. I mean, it's even though they're not the best teams, it's all 3 games are on the road, right?
Yeah, and it's games on the road, and just for any, I would say, stretch, if you can pick up just more points, more than half the points, you're pretty good. Especially in a race like they're in now, every point matters. And so obviously you like to get all 6, but I'm good with 4 out of the 6 there, especially if Florida continues on their downward trend, like they have been. But that's the easy part of this month, because the following week they have Tampa Bay and Nashville at home, 2 very good teams. And then they have
Nashville's
Boston
not a very good team, but
but I mean,
but the Lightning, yes.
I think they're a playoff team this season. I can double check. I'm pretty sure they're in the playoff spot right now. They've come back a little bit from how poor they were to start the season.
They always
right now,
do.
Nashville's second wild card, and they have 3 games in hand on Winnipeg. Same amount of points. They both have 72
there
points.
You go.
So they're there, but a few games here and there, like we just saw with the Leafs, they can flounder. But Nashville hasn't been a great season, especially considering how good they've been the past few seasons. But you have them, and then you have Boston on the road. And the week after that, you have New Jersey, the Islanders, and Columbus all at home. That would also be a good week to pick up some points against 2 teams you're in a wild card race with. Granted, the Leafs should be most concerned about Florida, but being able to beat the teams you're in the race with help a lot too, just in terms of worst case scenario, you fall out of the spot. You still have the wild card to fall back on, and then you have Florida on the 23rd, and then kind of like that last week there. That's where you need to win all those games. You have Florida on the 23rd, Tampa Bay on the 25th, Carolina on the 26th. Those 2 last games are on the road, so it's a back-to-back in Tampa and then Carolina. And then you play Ottawa and then Washington. I feel like you have to win all those games, maybe with the exception of the Washington one. But you have to beat Florida, you have to beat Tampa, you have to beat Carolina. And Ottawa is a given, you have to beat them. So I say, but knowing how this team can play, I think they can do it. I look at the Leafs' schedule at any point in time, and I go, they can beat these teams. Because I know they can, because I know they're a good team if they want to be. The issue is, will they come out and play like a team that deserves to win? That remains to be seen on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, yes. So, I mean, we're both pretty adamant that they are going to be a playoff team this year. Am I correct?
Hopefully. Like I said, this team is just so inconsistent where it fluctuates so much, where this past stretch they've looked great. But the stretch before that, even when they were winning games, they looked horrible. So I would say this week, in terms of the California road trip, is going to be a good barometer to determine whether or not their chances look good. Now, statistically, they have between a 90 to 95% chance to make the playoffs as of today.
Yeah.
I take those odds. Those are pretty good odds. But those
I would
fluctuate
love those
so
odds.
much. Those fluctuate so much, especially at this point in the season where one win can make or break a season pretty much.
Yeah.
So I would like to see them take this road trip. They swept it, I believe, last year. So there's no reason to say they can't do it again when the team is better and the other teams are worse.
Yeah.
They got to take these points if they want to make the playoffs.
Okay, and assuming that they do make the playoffs, how do you think they would fare when they get there?
Well, it seems very likely that they're going to be playing Tampa Bay in the first round. And I believe how they fare all relies on what goaltending they're getting. Because Tampa Bay is a team like the Islanders that struggle to score. I'm sure we can say. Tampa Bay has many weapons up front. And if your goalie isn't making saves, Vasilevsky is a very good goalie. You're not going to have your way with him night in and night out.
Yeah.
And so if they do make the playoffs, odds are it's going to be against Tampa, and Frederick Anderson needs to be their best player. Doesn't matter if Austin Matthews scores 20 goals in 7 games. Frederick Anderson needs to shut the door against Tampa Bay Lightning, or else the Leafs won't have a chance.
Yeah.
Especially after how Tampa got eliminated last year. They're going to be angry, and they're going to want to come out and go, we are the better team.
They are coming in focused on that one. Like, that series was their loss to a Zamboni driver.
Yeah.
It is still in the back of their minds.
So they're going to come out extremely angry and ready to go. So you need to be even more angry and ready to go with how you have yet to make it past the first round in 3 years. And like I said, their key
Well,
to
you have to
winning
make
that
past the
series.
first round in it's been more than 3 years,
Sure,
buddy.
sure, fair enough. I was mainly with this core, but yeah, fair enough. You can go back to, I believe, 2004.
I believe
I
04
believe it
as
was.
well.
So, sure, if you want to do that, then you go back that far. But like I said, Frederick Anderson needs to be the key. Frederick Anderson needs to be able to sit there, shut the door, and do his job.
Yeah, and well, okay, let's ask. Do you think they would win that series against Tampa?
Absolutely. I believe the Leafs can beat any team in the league.
Do you think they are going to win that series if it happens? I don't think they would win that series.
It depends though, because the rosters now aren't the rosters that will be then. Like Stamkos, I believe, is out and may miss the first round of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Given his injury, now he may not. It's hockey. He may go playoffs. I'm suddenly healed.
Yep.
But same with the Leafs, guys like Morgan Riley, Cody Ceci, who was pretty bad, but I wasn't as hard as him as most people were this season. Guys like that.
I'm not missing Cody Ceci.
I'm not necessarily missing him per se, but I just don't believe he was as bad as people said he was. But having guys like that in the lineup that at least have experience playing in these high intensity games,
that's true.
helps a lot more than running a pair of Martin Marincin and Timothy Liljegren.
Yep.
So it depends on what rosters are being put out there. Who's playing? Is Andreas Janssen back? Is Ilya Mikheyev back for the Leafs?
Yeah.
We have yet to see a Leafs team that's been completely healthy, and we still won't because Janssen, I believe, is out until the offseason regardless. So we have yet to see a Leafs team that's been completely healthy, and we won't see one all season.
Yep.
But how many of those players are going to be ready for the playoffs? Is somebody else going to get hurt before the playoffs? Is somebody really important going to go down for them, and now all of a sudden your chances are looking much worse? I would rather have this conversation when the spots are locked in and we know for the most part what's going on. There's just too much time left in the season for things to go wrong or for things to change.
Yeah, and we will make that conversation happen when we get there, but I think that wraps it up. Anything else to add?
Not really. I hope the Leafs are a good team because it makes me happy.
And it makes me happy as well. I hope the same thing. But thank you to Isaac for being on this episode. Isaac, by the way, hosts his own show, the Pop-Up Shop Podcast on SoundCloud. You can go check him out there. But in the meantime, we post every single day at the Amateur Hour Sports Podcast. So use all of the links in the description to follow us on social media, on YouTube, and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And as usual, we'll see you again tomorrow for another episode.